town is going to be turned into a major disaster area. Now you have got to warn people.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. Yes, today we have, funny enough, Gremlins. First of all, I don't know if this is going to be the only holiday movie I do this December. I just realized that. And yes, damn it, I consider Gremlins a Christmas movie, one of my top 5. So in case I don't even get another chance to say it, Merry Christmas! Thank you everybody for watching and supporting me throughout this first full year. I think almost full year. Next year will be the full year of doing movie reviews, but aside from the first few months of this one, this has been a full year movie review, so thank you very much, and happy holidays. 1984's Gremlins, which shockingly, I had a group go with me to go see this because it was back in theaters for like a day or two, and so many people have not seen this movie. What the hell? Dude, come on, look, Gremlins. How many of you boys and gals haven't seen Gremlins? Not like it's the movie that inspired the Furby or anything, but yeah, Gremlins is a 1984 film that, contrary to popular belief, not directed by Steven Spielberg, but presented by Steven Spielberg. He was trying to get his friend's film out there. The actual director of Gremlins is Joe Dante, who did a lot of he's done a lot of movies. Most notably for me, 1978's original Piranha, for all you horror fans, not the Piranha D or the Piranha 3 Double D, which they're stupid but they're fun. No, he did the original Piranha 1978, not any of the weird remakes. And also, one that I know none of you people have heard of at home, maybe a few of you older ones, but 1989's The Burbs, with a little guy, you might know his name, Tom Hanks might know him a little bit. But yeah, so this guy had been doing movies already for a while and kept doing them after this. But yeah, Gremlins came out, and I guess I thought it was just well known that, Gremlins, fucking and just like causing havoc. A sequel came out like 6 years later, and, the little Gizmo caca, and and like going around and causing. I was shocked. Nobody heard about this. Like, a lot of people, maybe it's just people my age, haven't heard about Gremlins, and I'm surprised. The movie takes place on Christmas Day. It's like Die Hard to me. Both are Christmas movies. Most of my favorite Christmas movies aren't even like ho ho ho, but they're more like, oh, it just happens to be going down on the holidays. So Gremlins stars two people that kind of fell out of the spotlight after their run in the 80s, but we have Zach Galligan literally going into his filmography, like he's been in other films, but nothing that you would know, like nothing very prolific or worth mentioning, which is unfortunate, but I kind of get it. He's not like an Oscar-winning performer in this movie, but he's the lead. He's our hero, so he's in it. And then we have Phoebe Cates, who very, very prolific filmography in the 80s. I'm not even going to begin to touch the pool of what she's been in, but if you're around in the 80s, you know her. If you're a fan of 80s movies, you definitely know her, but you can look her up. She has a very large filmography. For any of you guys and gals who apparently don't know about this film, for one, shame on you. Come on, little critter, dad's trying to find a unique birthday present for his kid on the way home from traveling and doing invention conventions, and he winds up in Chinatown, of course. Again, some parts of this film didn't age too well, but we'll get to that. Winds up in a town and China shop, walks out of there with a little cage and a creature inside called Mogwai, and given three very simple rules. What are those rules, ladies and gentlemen? Do not expose it to light. Direct sunlight will kill it. Do not get it wet. Water, very dangerous combination for these guys. And most importantly of all, number 3, no matter how much they beg, no matter how much they cry and plead, never, ever, ever feed them after midnight. Always did wonder about that one because you got time zones, but I digress. You never want to feed them after midnight. The 3 rules. And then what happens? Of course, every single one of those rules is eventually broken. And that's what happens. If you haven't seen this, yeah, you're going to be spoiled about it, but 1984 is a long time ago. So yeah, of course, little fuckers get wet. What happens when they get wet? They multiply. So you have a bunch of adorable little Furbies. Some of them are little shits. Some of them are cute, some of them are nice, but you got a bunch of them. Then, of course, they cut the cord for the clock, and then they ask to be fed. And then you feed them, and they become these nightmare creatures. They're still kind of cute, but it's just like scaly. They got claws. They're capable of homicide. Like they're gremlins. They're gremlins. There's always gremlins in the machines, and then they just wreak havoc on this like Midwestern town over Christmas. And then it's up to this kid, basically, and his gal, and the little nice remaining Gizmo Mogwai gremlin to save the day. So overall, my main pros for this film are that it is insanely creative. I mean, granted, the 80s were the Wild West when it came to filmmaking, especially in horror. I wouldn't call this film a horror film, but I would make a very heavy argument to say it is a dark comedy that has horror elements. Maybe not the same level of dark comedy as like Evil Dead 2, but it's a comedy first and foremost, but there are horror elements to it and a little bit of thriller, so I kind of consider it like that. But overall, it's a comedy. But super creative premise. The whole just idea of Gremlins is great, and just how it's executed. I don't know if it's nostalgia or because I like cool creative shit like that, but I love this film. And what's the biggest thing, if you want to win MovieMan over to a film, if you want him to be on your side for this film and advocate for your film in court of law, even if it's a terrible film, what do you gotta do, ladies and gentlemen? Survey says that's correct. Practical effects. You use practical effects. This film is 100% practical effects, baby. When I tell you the puppet work, the animatronics, the stop motion, the blood, the gremlins when they get like killed and they're melting and all of this, when the people are blowing up, things are on fire, 100% practical. And this movie, it warms the cockles of my heart. It really just makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. I wish more films would do this kind of shit. I don't care. Like, even for, you know what? Even being from the mid-80s, early 80s, whatever, even though some of the effects you might argue are dated, I think it still holds up. I think it looks great, and it works, and it looks great. It works so well. It's puppet work, because they're essentially little fucking puppets. Just do some magic with the camera and you're all set, and it works so well in the movie. I think to this day it holds up. And there's just the right amount of cheese. The movie has some serious moments, but like a lot of the deaths are pretty comedic. Like they're played for comedy. There are dark moments throughout for sure, and it gets violent, and it's like, oh my god, this is happening. But overall, there's moments where it's cheesy. I don't know if in the 80s you would consider it cheesy, but you definitely would consider there to be some fresh Gouda, some cheddar, some Swiss by today's standards, but just the right amount of cheese for me. Like I said, it's a good balance of humor and darkness as well. It's like, for me, my twisted mind, I see Evil Dead 2 as a great balance of like horror and comedy. But if that's a little bit too much horror for you, Gremlins is much lighter change of pace. I think you like Gremlins more, but there is still a combination of like dark shit happening and violence with these little guys running around and the comedy of it all. That being said, I'm not going to look at this film through a pair of rose-colored glasses. The acting, if we're doing the cons right now, like a list of them, the acting leaves a little bit to be desired. There's some, moments where like the delivery's kind of weird. There's some moments where like people are just kind of reacting nonchalantly to what's going on. Sometimes they're freaked out, other times they're not as freaked out as they should be. You don't read too heavy into it, and it doesn't take the film down too much, but if I had to be truthful, the acting could be better throughout. Some minor to major plot holes. The biggest one that I realized seeing this is that if they get wet, they multiply. Well, this is in the middle of winter, right? So there's snow everywhere. So wouldn't you think that if they touched any snow, if they dragged snow into a building and then it melted on them, they would just keep on multiplying? And I guess outside it makes sense, because if it stays cold enough, the snow is not going to melt, but there's a little bit of, some little gaps in logic here and there when it comes to truly getting wet. Whether it's a droplet of water that does work, or general, how much moisture is the actual requirement for it to happen. They kind of play around and yada yada the rules on that. So there are some gaps in logic there. Not to mention the fact, and my friend pointed this out, that throughout the film there's these little critters end up with at least 1 or 2 very tiny pistols, and it's like they don't make pistols that small. Maybe like the second pistol used in the film is like, you know, a little Derringer, so that makes sense. But the first one used is like a cap gun, and you're like, I don't know about that. Like I said earlier with the whole Chinatown bit, some lines don't age too well. Nothing that would get you canceled these days. Nothing as bad as what's in some of these older films. But admittedly, some lines, I mean, especially when it comes to, like, for lack of a better term, when they use the word foreigners a lot in this film, it's not always in a derogatory sense, but especially with one character, it is. So parts of the film don't age well, but again, they serve their purpose, and it's kind of like, you know, watching old cartoons back in the day. Like, now we know that it's wrong, but that's kind of just what culture was back then. So all things considered, I'm gonna keep this review pretty short. Gremlins is, to this day, I don't even remember when I first saw this film, but I'm pretty sure I was very young, and since it was rated PG, my mom was like, oh yeah, you can see it, even though this is totally one of those films that should have been rated PG-13. And I think by today's standards is, or would be, but it's a film that I saw as a kid, and it was creative enough and kind of creepy and funny, and it stuck with me, and I've just seen it for years, and I love watching it, and it's fun, and I love showing people it that haven't seen it before. If you haven't seen it, definitely watch it. It is 100% worth a watch. Even if you don't like love it, it's still like, you know, one of those films that everybody just kind of has to watch. It's like Jurassic Park, you know, like, even if you don't like dinosaurs, it's just a film you kind of have to watch. But overall, if I'm being fair, there are cons and pros, and although I love the film, I can't look at it completely through rose-colored glasses. There are some things I wish the film did more of, and there are some, and I think that the film, like, you know, it's definitely, like, it gets pretty zany in spots, and kind of like that becomes the whole narrative in places, and it's not a perfect film, but it's really enjoyable. It's fun, it's funny, it's just the right amount of dark, it's a good balance. It could be acted better, it's directed well, the effects are phenomenal. So overall, if I'm being fair to like what I love and yet still the film in itself, I think I'm going to biasly re-rate this one, because I did write a rating already, but I think I'm disagreeing with myself already. I'll give it a solid 4 out of 5. It was going to be a low 4 at first, but I'm like, you know what? No, it accomplishes most of what it sets out to do. Not perfectly, but very well. So I'd say Gremlins is worth a solid 4 out of 5. It's still one of my top 5 favorite holiday movies. I still love watching it. I definitely think everybody should watch it. I got to get lucky enough and see it. They brought it back in theaters, but they brought it back in 4D. So I got just like the seats were like doing this, and getting sprayed, spinning around. Like it was super fun. It was worth seeing it in 4D. It was a good time. But yeah, that's all there is to it. This might be, like I said, my only holiday film that I review. Hell, this year, but especially this month. So if that's the case, and instead of doing Christmas movies towards, you know, Christmas, you see me just do Spider-Man and The Matrix. I mean, don't be surprised, but that'll probably be what it is. So thank you guys and gals so much for watching. As always, stay tuned for next episode, whatever movie review I do. And goodbye, travelers.